Let's compare something like benefit fraud with something like tax evasion. Immediately, you can sense that there is an inequality in how these ethically identical issues are examined and scrutinised. Why is one called Benefit Street and the other the Wolf of Wall Street? Why is one demonised and the other lionised?
It's time to meet Robin McAlpine, former journalist, lobbyist, and now the director of think tank Commonweal. He's been comparing the figures for benefit fraud and corporate fraud in the UK.
OK, Robin, so let's talk benefit fraud versus tax evasion. Not a great deal of ethical difference between the two, but at least to my mind, there's a disproportionate level of discussion and scrutiny of one over the other. So can we just get kind of some ballpark basic numbers about the scale of benefit fraud in this country?
The different attention that's paid to these two things have got absolutely nothing to do with numbers. So we're looking at estimates of about £2.8 billion is what's overclaimed in the benefit system. They call this fraud. But then about £1.8 billion is unclaimed. This is people who were due money that never got it. But if you compare that to corporate tax evasion and tax avoidance, that's £90 billion at the very least. A lot of this is legal, some of it's illegal, some of it's just a bit dodgy. And yet we spend all our time on the backs of some poor single mother in a house and estate for slightly overclaiming in benefits. It's not justified by the numbers.
What is the cost to society when we're comparing these two things?
Right, so if you get caught with benefit fraud now and you get your benefits withdrawn, you go from not enough income to live to no income. That's a devastating impact, and the impact on children in particular is appalling. The thing that's so awful about the corporate fraud is not just that they are unable to dodge so much of their duty to society, their tax burden. It's the fact that they've got so much money now that they change the rules. They influence government to change the rules. I did this for years. This is my living. I was a lobbyist. Government is filled with people who are seconded from big business. If you go and you look at the people who are writing tax policy, a lot of them are there temporarily from the big accountancy firms who are working with the big corporations. It's not just that they influence policy, their employees write the policy in government. They do it, spend 2 years there, and then they go straight back in. It's called the revolving door. None of this is accidental. None of this just happens to happen. This is all carefully planned and designed.
When you think about depictions in media of benefit fraudsters versus corporate fraudsters, I think of a certain kind of glamour associated with when we're looking at, you know, people like Frank Abagnale in the film Catch Me If You Can. But then when we look at people who are on benefits, who really are in situations that are against their control, and they really are finding it difficult, it's all about personal responsibility. It's all about you better sort your attitude, you better pull your socks up. And that is just head-scratchingly kind of baffling for me.
Well, what they've done is, they've basically created the Hunger Games, but your only thing you've got is a biro. Right, so it's the Hunger Games, you've got to feed your kids. And it's a battle, and the only thing you've got is a biro pen to fill in a form with it. And I'm just going to be absolutely clear in this. You know, if my kids were starving, would I fiddle the benefits for them? If my kids were hungry, I wouldn't think twice about it.
In an analysis of almost 7,000 national press articles, it was found that 29% of news stories referenced benefit fraud. It's clearly a journalistic obsession.
There's only one person that you can defame in public, and it's poor people. You can't get legal aid to sue. You can say anything you want about poor people.
What sort of strategies do corporations engage in order to keep changing the conversation around what their activities actually are behind the curtain of what they'd like us to see?
It's not the corporations that try to focus the hatred, the anger at the poor. They're just chasing their agenda, and their agenda is deregulate, give us what we want. But if their agenda is cut tax, and it always is, it's always cut tax, if their agenda is cut tax, it falls on the politicians. And then the politicians have got to find somewhere to cut from. And it's the politicians who, under pressure to constantly cut tax, are saying, right, well, we need to cut spending. So where do we cut spending? They poor people, they can't defend themselves. How do we make the public swallow it? Let's do one more speech about benefit cheese. And that's how it works.